How's it going, guys? Those of you who've been watching my videos will know that I'm a big fan of the cruiserweight division because there's just been so many great fights in recent years in the cruiserweight division, and I just think that the potential for great matchups in that division with all the big heavy punchers that we have and all the entertaining fighters and the high level of talent we have in that division. I just think that there's a lot of potential for some great fights. Now, one great fight that has been ordered by the WBC, and I'm not sure how this is going to work because Marco Huck is currently the IBO champion, and as far as I know, he hasn't really been attempting to get a shot at the WBC. I didn't know that he was really in line for a shot at that title. But from what I'm hearing is that Marco Huck and Mairis Briedis have been ordered by the WBC to fight in a final eliminator. Now, it's a bit strange, this situation, because Tony Bellew has currently moved up to heavyweight. So what I'm suspecting is the WBC, perhaps they don't think that Tony Bellew will be back at cruiserweight anytime soon, and perhaps they're preparing to set up an interim fight or something. But putting all that aside, let's just talk about this fight, if this fight is to get made, because it's a fantastic matchup. Now, Mairis Briedis, he's a fighter who I only found out about him this year. I didn't really know much about him prior to that. And from what I've seen of him, he's a very promising cruiserweight contender. Okay, the guy's got a heck of a lot of power, looks very strong, very solid. Looks to be quite tough. But to be honest, he's very basic. I think that there are other guys at cruiserweight right now who I think are far more talented. Far more fluid. I mean, you look at fighters like a fighter like Alexander Usyk, for example. To me, Alexander Usyk he has too much fluidity, too much skill, too much amateur pedigree, and if he were to get in the ring with Mairis Briedis, personally, I think that would be a mismatch. Also, you have people like Krzysztof Glavatsky, you've got Murat Gassiev, Denis Lebedev. All of those guys, to me, at least at this stage, they seem a level above Mairis Briedis. I just think that Mairis Briedis at the moment, don't get me wrong, the guy's a very promising prospect, a very promising contender, sorry, but I really just don't see him as a world class cruiserweight just yet. Now, a fight against Marco Huck would certainly be a step up because Marco Huck is one of the most well accomplished and one of the most experienced champions at cruiserweight at the moment. I mean, the guy's been around for a long time. What has to be said about Marco Huck, though, is that he is considerably past his prime, and the reason for that is the guy has just been in so many, back and forth wars, so many hard fights. I mean, if you look at some of the guys that Marco Huck has fought in his career, he's fought Alexander Povetkin, he's fought Denis Lebedev, he's fought Steve Cunningham, he has fought Ola Afolabi several times. He has fought Victor Ramirez. The guy has been around for such a long time. He's fought so many top level, high level cruiserweights, and he's been in back and forth close fights with these guys, and it really takes it out of you. He also fought Dmitro Kutcher in his last fight, and for those of you who don't know, Dmitro Kutcher was coming off a devastating first round knockout against former cruiserweight champion Enzo Maccarinelli. And I watched that fight with the Box Nation commentary, and I felt that the Box Nation commentary were a little bit harsh on Marco Huck. I mean, they were claiming that it wasn't a good performance and that Marco Huck looked shit, basically. But from what I was seeing, Marco Huck to me outboxed a very strong, very durable, and very powerful and very promising European champion in Dmitro Kutcher. I mean, Dmitro Kutcher, like I said, in his previous fight before fighting Huck, he completely blew Enzo Maccarinelli away in one round. So, it's not like the guy was a scrub. The guy was a very dangerous opponent and a guy that was young and in his prime. And I thought that Marco Huck did a very good job to me. In fact, I thought he dominated the fight. I don't know what the commentators were talking about. I don't even think the fight was close. I thought Marco Huck showed a lot of skills in the fight, and I thought he actually boxed better than usual because the thing with Marco Huck, he's usually a very clumsy fighter. He's usually a fighter who likes to stand and fight. He's a tough guy. He's a hard man. He's a guy who likes to go in there and scrap. That's why he has such a big following, I think, in Germany. It's because he's always in such a good scrap. His fights are always close. He makes it harder than it needs to be in the ring. The guy has got skills and he can box, but he's just a guy that he's just a hard man. He's a tough guy that likes to fight, and I think that is why a lot of people have gotten behind him in Germany, and I think that's why. I think it's why he's had so many close fights in his career, because he gives up a lot of his advantages, because he's a fairly big cruiserweight. He's a fairly hard puncher. He's got a nice little tight guard that he uses. He used to train with Uli Wegner. For those of you who don't know, Uli Wegner is probably the most well known and the most experienced trainer from Germany. And he's trained people like Arthur Abraham, Sven Ottke, Marcus Bayer, guys like that. He trained Robert Hellenius too. Who else? He's trained a bunch of guys. Uli Wegner. He currently trains Kubrat Pulev. He's a very well accomplished and well known trainer from that area. So Marco Huck got years and years of experience training with him, and I don't know whether that was a good thing or not, because I think that Marco Huck, he needs a trainer that can kind of up his game a little bit and teach him to be a little bit more fluid, because I do think he's a little bit stiff and a little bit upright, which it's a good thing to an extent, but it can lead to a fighter becoming a little bit too conventional. Like he doesn't really move his head much, and he doesn't really bend at the waist, and he doesn't really use much feints. Everything he does is 100% conventional, and even his brawling tactics, for example, it's just he's just too easy to hit. He's right there in front of you. He's straight up. He's stiff, and I think that's a problem for him in a lot of his fights. Namely when he fights a guy that's got good skills. Like if you look at the Denis Lebedev fight, for example, that was one of his problems in that fight. Whereas you had Huck, who was very conventional, very upright, and then you had Lebedev, who's a fairly slick southpaw who has got a lot of boxing skill and who can fight at angles and stuff. So I just think that Marco Huck, he's pretty much he's set in his ways these days. He's no longer with Uli Wegner, by the way, because a couple of years ago he split from the Sauerlands, and I don't actually know who trains him now, but I know it's not Uli Wegner, it's somebody else. But he still fights the same way. I mean, he really hasn't changed his style at all. And he's a good fighter, Marco Huck. He's entertaining. I like watching him fight. He's his opponent, or his this fight isn't happening yet. It's only been ordered by the WBC. That's what I forgot to mention before. But yeah, if this fight does happen, I'm not sure who to pick in this fight, because I think Mairis Briedis, to me, he's as I said, I don't really know much about him other than the fact that he's a strong guy that really hits hard. I mean, he knocked out Alejandro Duradola, the guy who destroyed Dmitry Kudryashov in 2 rounds, and before that fight, Dmitry Kudryashov was being touted as a future cruiserweight star. He had a lot of hype behind him, so that was an upset with that fight, and then Mairis Briedis destroyed Duradola. It was an easy fight, so yeah, Mairis Briedis is certainly a very dangerous contender. He's certainly one to watch, but it's really difficult to say how good he is, because he really hasn't, other than fighting Duradola, he really hasn't fought anybody. I mean, he just doesn't have the miles on the clock, doesn't have the experience. Now, I suppose after Tony Bellew gets fucked up by David Haye, which he's gonna, if Tony Bellew wants to keep hold of that WBC title, then the likelihood is he's going to have to fight one of these guys. And honestly, I think both of these guys, Marco Huck and Mairis Briedis, are a dangerous fight for Bellew. I'm not saying that Bellew couldn't win, but I think that they're certainly very dangerous should those fights happen. But yeah, anyway, I think that this is a good fight if it happens. I hope it happens, because I think it's a fantastic matchup. Like I said, this is no prediction or nothing, because the fight isn't signed or nothing. It's just been ordered by the WBC. And I would love to see this fight. I really hope this fight happens. I'm getting excited thinking about it, because it's such a explosive fight, and it'll be very entertaining. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching.